Welcome back, Tzvi Broker with Yehoshua Gerzi and the Work Inspired podcast. Before we start off with today's topic, I just want to reflect, we were just discussing before how much we appreciate the feedback. After last week's podcast, speaking about how to distress your workday, one of the comments we got was about that alcohol we have in the background, if we were trying to hint anything. So the truth is it wasn't so intentional, but we figured let's put out a challenge there as you listen to today's podcast. Try to notice that which was placed, which is connected to today's topic. So what is today's topic? I'll tell you, Rabbi Gerzi, this is something which I've thought about a lot, and I've always wished that someone would speak about. So I said, let's do it. Let's speak about it. Because I don't think I just had this question. And this is the question. So you're standing there at the ATM, or in Israel, as we call it, the kasbomat. Okay? And you're standing there and you're holding your wad of money, right? You're holding... All right, shekels. Okay, we respect all cultures. And you're holding your wad of money.
There's no pounds here.
That was intentional, just to respect our Brits. Okay, so here we go. You're holding your wad of money. And the question is, how do I feel? How do I feel when I'm holding this money? How do I feel inside? If you're thinking about it and not doing three other things at the same time. But how do I feel when I'm holding that money?
It's an amazing exercise. Just to hold money, and just to be with it.
To be with it.
What does it do to you?
Yeah, that's something I thought about one time when I was actually not, doing three things while I was at the Gaspa. So some people, they feel great, right? And some people, they may feel uncomfortable. Maybe they can feel a little bit uncomfortable holding all this money, right? Some people may feel proud. Some people may feel anxious. It may depend on whose money you're holding. Is it your money? Someone else's money? Was it borrowed money? But it's a fascinating question because in Judaism, when in Torah, when we speak about money on some level, and this is what we're going to really unpackage here today, the Torah relates to money as not even being an object, right? Not even being an object. So the question is that how does the Torah describe what money is? And how could having a deeper understanding of that give us greater insight into our whole experience around money? How we relate to our own money, holding money, and how we feel about it. So,
good question.
Take us away.
Good question. So are we going to speak we'll speak at the end about history, yes?
Yeah, we'll get into the history, especially because we see how things are actually changing in our times. But
okay. So I think to start off with, this nakuda of money, when did, I guess we'll speak about it in the history side, but just to open up, that did we always have money? In Gan Eden, did we have money?
You don't see it mentioned in the Chumash.
We didn't. Everything was mamash ready and prepared for us. So the evolution of money, so to speak, started after Chet Adam. When we left Gan Eden, that's when things started. So we'll go into that at the end. But this nakuda of money, it's very interesting. So one of the Makubalim explain the nakuda of money is really something that we shouldn't need. We shouldn't need money. The way we should be functioning, excuse me, the way we should be functioning is that there's enough of everything in the world. And if we really lived from a space or a place of consciousness that everyone was a being of obligation, everyone was a being of service, so then we wouldn't need money. We would just share. Everyone would have what they have, and we would share it out, and there would be enough. We wouldn't need money. So, on a certain respect, money became an externalization that was needed because of ego.
Interesting.
Because of ego. We needed something to help us with responsibility. We needed something to help us with, to know where I'm holding. And it's a funny metric, but it's nevertheless, it's a really interesting metric. It's a very interesting metric, money. So, pre-Chet Adam and Chava were in Gan Eden, the Malachim, everyone brought them what they needed in order to live, and that's how life was meant to be. There's abundance, there's enough of everything in the world, and if we lived as beings of obligation, no one would miss out. No one would miss out. Everyone would have everything that they need. Enough food, enough clothing, homes, protection. Everyone would have what they need. So after Chet Adam, when ego now came into play, the ego, some people say the ego ain't my amigo, or some people say, no, the ego is my amigo if we use it properly. But now after Chet Adam, we have to have something external to keep us, so to speak, honest, to keep us accountable. And it's a much bigger subject. I could speak on this and show you Makaras for already 2 hours. So I've got here, my brother kindly printed, this is from a shir. This is just on the history of money, the history of money.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to speak about. There's a kuntras, a lot to speak about. So that's stage one, that it became something that wasn't needed, and it became something because the ego came into play.
Fascinating.
And we need that accountability. But the other thing with money, what's very interesting, if we look at Chazal, if we look at the Medrash tells us, really, in essence, the Hebrew word, or the word that we use is zuz. Zuz, what does zuz mean? To move.
Move. Yes,
Zuz
it's
is
funny
money,
that's the word.
but zuz means to move. Also kesef and kesufim. Desire, ratzon. It's constantly changing. Like we have it isolated on one thing, but there's many changes within that. We have our ebbs and flows. So the language of money is a language of moving, zuz, kesev, as well sulam. The Ben Ish Chai writes, sulam is gematria mammon, money, as well. Money. Again, it's what we do. It's a sulam. What am I doing with my money? As I grow, am I growing with a certain mindset? It could be, for example, as the Ben Ish Chai writes, but it's brought as well by the Jikafa, the Inyan of Parnasa. He brings many gematrias for Parnasa, but he writes as well, the Inyan of Sulam and Mammon is that as I grow in Avodas Hashem, the hashkafa of how I use my money, the mindset and the practical way I use my money needs to change as well. So my spirituality will impact sulam. As I grow, as I develop, my spiritual state will impact the way I use money. So again, we walk away with this idea of change. It's not static. Money is not static in Yiddishkeit. The words that we use to describe money, it's not static.
It's something which is always moving.
Static. It's moving. It's not static.
That's fascinating. I know that Medrash, I think you're quoting, we spoke about in the base Medrash program. Right? I believe some of the other Lashonos it also brings over there is a ma'os, right? Ma'as.
Yes,
It's fascinating. I remember discussing with the Bnei Chabur that every single Lashon that we find about money is all hinting to the fact that this is something which is transient, and that's really the walk away.
It's fluid. It's changing.
Yeah,
not static.
The walk away really from the Medrash is trying to give us a message and to realize the fact that it's not something that we can necessarily grab and hold onto, that it's going to be ours. We should recognize the fact that it's something which is
transient.
It's something moving and moves from one person to the next. And for some people the fact that money and wealth is something which we can't necessarily acquire. It could be a frustrating experience, and it's fascinating to see that the Torah reflects that that's within the whole entire reality of what it is, as you shared, that was the whole creation of it was something which was going to be developed in that way.
You just reminded me, Rev Mordechai Zuckerman, we were once sitting and we're speaking about language. We're speaking about the language of money. And I remember this is just before I was going to get married and I had to find a job. I was learning in Kollel, but I was studying. I need to earn some geld as well. So I was working in the morning and the evening, and I was learning in Kollel throughout the day. I remember he said to me, just by the by, it's something fascinating, that all the lashonos of money, as we just said, it's transient, changing, it's not static. But then what are we told about this world? And what are we told about the world to come? That this whole world is transient. Whatever that means, it's a big, but it's whole. So he said that money is a microcosm of the whole world. It became a microcosm. And the question is, our relationship to money as well gives us deeper insight in our representation to this world. So people who are very controlling, people who get very nervous and very worry, there's a lot of control. Anxiety, a lot of control,
you find that
stress,
connection that people, that's why you find that correlation between control and money parallel a lot, because it's the same sort of type of manifestation of the person who's trying to hold on to something which in essence is transient. And money is...
And you're saying that money is
a manifestation of that, but it's also a parallel to this sort of like whole experience of life that we're living in.
And he says,
Wow.
have emunah in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Recognize that you're going to be spending, the average person, you look at the numbers, the average person spends hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pounds, dollars, shekel throughout their life, millions of dollars throughout their life, buying a house and food and children and like, it's crazy. We spend so much money, and if we think about it, it may hurt. We like, what crazy numbers, but everyone does it. Everyone's done it for, especially for the last 100 and something years. Before that, it was more difficult. People live differently, but we're spending so much. That's the way it is. If we are not fluid, if our ability to be fluid, to have devekus, emunah, and bitachon, if we don't have that, then it can hurt. It can hurt. We become very controlling. We can become very static, and it's not poshut. It isn't poshut. It's an amazing thing, natina, to give. You could read it both ways. I'm sure everyone knows that. You could read it both ways, because the more you give, the more you get back. And I remember in London, one of the Rabbonim, Sasva Rebbe, has a Beis HaMedrash, and in the Beis HaMedrash there's a family, Fresh Wasser. And the Rav today is a Fresh Wasser. They're a wealthy family, and I remember he said, you should be able to give. I was a bacha, I was a kid, I was a teenager. He said to me, Rabbi Freshwasser says to me, you should be able to give now, because it doesn't, you think it's easier to give on your, £10. Think about £1 million, £2 million. So he would always say, he said to me a number of times, not always say, but a number of times he said to me, give Maisa now. Start straight away. Make it a ritual. Make it a practice. Because when the numbers get bigger, then you'll have all the excuses in the world.
Wow.
So it's a practice to be giving. It's a practice to recognize, let go. Be responsive and responsible to what's going on in front of you. But money's a kli. It's a vessel. Let go. Don't take it too seriously. Take it seriously, but not too seriously, because it'll end up hurting if a person takes it too seriously. You have to be ever so careful. Ever so careful. We're not going to speak about it today, but we've spoken about before as well. We're not after money. We're not after money.
Right.
What's the end of my sentence? What's the proof?
Well, we're looking, we understand the money, the money is a piece of looking for, quality of life and what we're trying to live for.
We're looking for a way of life. So if we get stuck and we put the wrong intention and attention on this, then it will hurt. But if we chapshat that it's a kli, zuz, it's always moving, it's fluid, comes to me, comes to you, comes to me, it's the nature of the world. If we learn to be healthy, non-controlling in an unhealthy way, then changes everything.
Wow. Yeah, so just to sum up this aspect of the transience of money, what I'm hearing over here is that the fact that money is something which is always moving and always moving from one person to the next, that the way that we can channel that experience is recognizing that we're just, on some level, we're just funneling, not funneling illegal funds, but we're funneling money.
Be careful with your words.
We're funneling money through us, and we should make sure that we don't end up clogging up the system. One thing I mentioned it before in terms of this aspect of the fact that from a Jewish perspective, we don't necessarily relate to money as being an object.
Shabbos.
Yeah, Shabbos is there because it's fascinating. I was having a discussion with my kids, because kids always get caught up on this one. Just recently, I think it was last Shabbos, talking about muktzah. We're like, okay, well, why is money muktzah? Why is money muktzah? Because it's I want to say that money's like a hammer, money's like a phone. And I was, explaining this idea to them, because obviously children, when they first learn about muktzah, they just assume if it has batteries, it's muktzah, non-batteries, it's not muktzah. That actually, when it comes to money, right, that even though a phone, right, a kli shelemachtor le'isser, right, is something which you can move if you need a place, that money, you can't. And because I was explaining to him this idea that money is considered to be just like a rock, right? It's something which is not considered to be a vessel, which is fascinating because what we're seeing over here is that ultimately, and this is something, especially if you're involved in, currencies and trading, you recognize, what is the value of this? I was just recently in a workshop, was just, speaking about the fact, what is money? It's a piece of paper. It's a piece of paper. What's the importance which is attributed towards it, is dependent on different factors. And therefore, we see that reflected in halacha, this idea. It's profound that halacha is showing us that the way that we relate to this piece of paper, even though you have a lot of people running after it, people will go to work and spend many hours, it's just considered to be a rock because we understand about the fact that it's something which is transient, And one of the other areas, that we were just discussing this before, is where we see it's amazing. It's amazing to see the depth of the Torah. That when we see the role of money as being something which we see the power of transference. Right, the power of transference. When it comes to Meiser Sheni, or when it comes to Shvius, right, to Mei Shvius, right, as well. We see this fascinating reality, right? This fascinating reality of the fact that I can, have my peros, right? I could have my fruits, right? I could have my produce of Meiser Sheni, right? And because it's too difficult for me to be able to bring all of it to Yerushalayim, I'm able to have this thing which has a status of Kedusha, and say, now this bill is my Meiser Sheni. And then when I take this bill, right, and I go down to Yerushalayim, and then I give this bill now to someone else, right, to buy myself the produce, buy myself the food that I'm going to eat, somehow that Kedusha that was on my apples up in the Golan has now moved to this food that I'm sitting and eating, in the center of Jerusalem. Now, how did that take place? If I sat there in the Golan, and I sat there and did a hisboidedus, and I got into a state of consciousness, and I said, I'm now going to move my kedusha of my peros, into my this food in Yerushalayim. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. You go to a Rabbi, it doesn't go to work. It doesn't work. Any say different. Doesn't work. What we need, money, and the money has the ability to be able to transfer kedusha through it. And we see the halachas are very intricate, complex when it comes to Shemitah, how careful we need to be, right, with the money, because there's kedusha that stays in the money. It's a fascinating reality, and we can go through these halachas, sometimes.
And the pnimius of the
pnimius of the halacha.
You've got the halachas, you have the halachas, but then the pnimius of the halachas.
What the pnimius of the halacha is screaming at us something about money, right? Which is this ability of transference, right? Which is very, very profound. It's very profound. It's very profound because when we understand that what's taking place always through money, and this is something that I've been trying to think about, and when I'm standing at the ATM machine, right? Is that ultimately, right? When a person works, say a person's a plumber, and he goes and he's working on a job, and he spends 5-6 hours on something, right? And then afterwards, right, a person pays him, and gives him money. What is that money, right? Is that money just a piece of paper? That money is a dollar bill. In essence, what that money is it's a transference. It's an exchange for the kochos, the effort that was put in. And
you have as well in pidyon nefesh. Same idea, pidyon nefesh, that any tzedakah, you can put some of yourself spiritually. You can transfer something of you. So we're speaking about money, buying and selling. I've worked and now I earn. So there's a very logical, practical application. Okay, this is a good tool to show, it's a good metric to show value. But then you've got from a spiritual perspective, and again, it's something we're not going to go into now, but the fact that you could take 160 coins, you could take tzedakah money, you could take money, and you can transfer, even, so to speak, averus. If a person's done tshuva, they could do some sort of physical rectification or beautification, something spiritual, because money is we say in English, you have the term blood money.
No, bloody. We leave bloody for the
blood money. Blood money. The Americans don't have blood money.
In America we don't say
so
that.
There's this term, like by the mafia, they call it blood money or something. But in Yiddishkeit, there's this nefesh that spiritually you can place some of yourself, so to speak, spiritually upon this. You can transfer something from you upon money.
Upon a piece. Wow.
And it could be used for kedusha, it could be used to mataken, it could be used to fix things, it could be used for healing. And there's some people out there, Mekubalim out there, people who are trained. Again, it's a big conversation, but they have the ability to do tremendous healings
through money,
through
as being
tzedakah, through tzedakah as money being a tool. It's an amazing. It's just another dimension, another facet. It's just very interesting of transference.
Right, which is a world of a difference from, just the general worldview, right? From a non-Torah worldview of just seeing money as just being,
physical.
It's a physical thing.
Physical.
It's a physical thing. And what we see is that the Torah is a tremendous kavod, right, for this idea of what money is and the role that it could end up playing.
And the halachas are really intricate. You open up a choshen mishpat. And dealing with monetary issues, as complex as anything.
Right.
It's not something that's like pushed to the side.
Right.
It's something which is it's given the proper respect. It's just a funny, odd thing. It's like we're going around doing, but there's tremendous depth within what we're doing.
Right. And I think that each area of halacha is giving us insight into another aspect of the spiritual side, which of money, which gives us tools to know how we can experience it. And I'll just talk about one example. Here at Work Inspired, one of the things we love speaking about is gamification, right? Right, with the study of being able to understand the psychology of what motivates people and drives people in games, all right, and then to be able to apply it to other areas of life. And one of the models that we've discussed, in terms of gamification. Anyone who's into gamification, let us know. But it's anyone. We'll have a conversation. But it's gamification. One of the ideas is that one of the core driver for people, not everyone, some people more than others, is achievement. People like to feel a sense of achievement, and I was studying about it and saw, right, that if we think about the idea of money, right, money ends up becoming a very big metric for achievement for a lot of people. And that's actually part of the psychology of why some people are driven towards money or love the idea of amassing money, because at the end of the day, it's a metric. It's a tangible metric, to be able to say, oh, how much did I do? How much did I achieve? Well, I can see. It's something which is a metric.
Psychologically, you could push yourself because, if you would ask somebody, and we've done this hundreds of times over, in two places. One place, just as money is a metric, if you ask somebody, okay, do you think you can earn 100 shekel this week? 100 shekel? Yeah, okay, let's sit down, write down. I can help somebody walk their dog. Okay, 100 shekel, very nice. What about by next month, 500 shekel? Too much. Like there's a number that it hurts us, like it bothers us, it's uncomfortable. Okay, what about 200 shekel by next week? By next month? Yeah, 200 shekel, okay. Fine. 300 shekel by next month? Oh, I don't know, but try? Yeah, let's try. And the person does it. So they help somebody move house. And you build slowly, and then you could break out of that comfort zone. There's a number which will basically call out to you discomfort. So if I say, could you make 1,000 shekel by the end of the month? Oh, I don't know. Like that. But if I say 500, yeah, I think I could do 500. I could do 3 different, meetings with people. Okay, very nice. So it's a metric which there is going to be a limit where you feel a little bit of discomfort, and it's an amazing metric to break through that. Money is a fantastic metric to do that. Another place in the Arba Yesodot, we have physical health. So another really, really, really important metric is health. It's health. You can show that you are growing through how your body is responding to what you're doing in life. So if you could run faster, if you could run longer, if you look different, you've moved your body from like round to square, if you are drinking more, like right. There are metrics. And in Avodas Hashem, we need these metrics. And as we've said before, I don't know if we've mentioned it in this forum, in our Dor, the tikkun is a tikkun on the Gashmiut. The tikkun is a tikkun. Physical health, financial health. For deiros, no one cared. I mean, we always like money. We always like geld. You didn't like geld. Baruch Hashem, you give good people money, they do good things with money. We make the world a better place. Physical health, many people didn't speak about physical health, but in our generation it's so important. This is our tikkun. What I've received from my teachers, this is our tikkun, coming from times the Baal Shem Tov. It's to be metaken in the physical and financial arena. But what comes with physical health and financial health, which is very easily seen, is this metric of growth.
Right. In this area we have this aspect where it becomes on some level easier, when it comes to relationship, just to speak about a different one of these. So it could be harder to be able to gauge exactly where it is, but when it comes to money, right, or it comes to, how thick your muscles are, or how many push-ups you can do, there you go. That's something which is, easier to see. Wow. But what I think is interesting, just to reflect on what we've said here today in the podcast, is that for many people, and once again, like Rabbi just said, it's not a bad thing, the fact that when it comes to money, right, as being something which we can see as being a metric and feel achieved, we can look and say, wow, this is what I've achieved this today, this is what I've achieved this month, right? So, to look at a fat, wad of money right after you just made a big deal and to say, feel good about yourself. I've achieved something. I think that what we've discussed here today is that there's there's an alternative depth to feeling a sense of achievement, right, when we're standing and holding that money. And what that is that if you're involved in work, right, if you've invested your time, if you've invested your energies, if you've taken your interest, or you've taken your natural talents, your skills, and you've applied it into something, right, into your job, right, and then as a result of that, right, you're given money, right, to understand that money which you're holding is an expression of what you've achieved. It's an expression of who you are. It's an expression of what you've been able to put out into the world. And then when you take that money, right, if you still holding on to money these days, not just moving it from account to account, but
we'll get to that now.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that to wrap up. But if you take that money and then you go out to the shop and you buy something, an amazing thing can happen. Is that thing that you've just bought, right, with that money could absorb that transference of the fact. So now it's not just a car, right? Now it's not just a couch, it's not just a new phone, right? It's not just, an upgraded kitchen. That physicality that you have is an expression and manifestation of that which you've put into it. And that creates so much more meaning. That's, we speak about, Yaakov Avinu, why he went to get the Pachim Danim, because that tzaddik, right, and what we're striving to do is that we have a deep relationship with that which we have, because for tzaddikim, their money is important to them. It's important to them, it's precious to them, because they understand, right, it wasn't just something which showed up on their table, it wasn't just something that was given to them. Right, they understand there's a lot of depth to it. And that gives us a totally different way of experiencing when we're holding that money, of understanding that we can connect to it in a very, very deep way. But okay, before we wrap up, let's, just that was the question that really, Rabbi hinted to in the beginning, is that, you might be listening to this and watching to this and wondering, holding money at an ATM, come on, that's like so 1995 or, 2010. I've never seen money, it just goes from this account to that account, it used to be credit cards, now we just use phones. Who ever actually comes in contact with money? And that's this fascinating question of how to look at this. The fact that we seem to be moving in a historical direction, right, where we're becoming less and less actually in contact with this. And does the Torah have something to say about that?
So you're holding this up. I'll say the cow, the sheep.
Right. Even before.
I think there's something really important, and we discussed this. There's this kuntrus on the history of money. Kuntrus on the history of money, full of good makoros. What's happening? What's happening? What in the evolution in Tikkun Olam, coming to Matakin this Welt? What's going on? And there's something that we see is that everything in reality is becoming more and more ethereal. Everything is becoming more ruchnius. It's becoming more spiritual, so to speak. What do I mean? I don't mean spiritual as in spiritual, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Devekus, and that form of spiritual. I'm talking about from physicality to spirituality, from physicality to non-physical. So if we look at the history of money, it's very fascinating. If we go back, just in Chumash, and the transaction of Avraham and buying the Keva Machpelah with the money, and then you look at Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, you look all through Tanakh, there are so many transactions with money. It wasn't always money, it used to be livestock, and people would trade livestock. So I need food, so let me give you something of value. And that term value is very important, because really when we're speaking about money and we're speaking about transactions, we're speaking about value. What do I value? And that's something very important that we can very much get lost in. Sometimes you look today, we've got NFTs, non-fungible tokens. So it's an amazing thing. That's what we're valuing right now. But from the beginning, we started with livestock. Then from livestock, we went into money. And then from money, it was difficult to schlep around money. So really, I think it was the Chinese that started the notes. That caught on in Europe. And then you have the banking system with money as well, obviously. But you have then the banking system where you can just swap a note. And we've gone from notes, we've got credit cards and notes like this and more. So I've moved now from the world of notes, where I've put like numbers on notes, which is really strange. I've got credit cards, or now we've got online banking,
right?
And all it is, it's moving from a cow to a
click.
I was going to say from a cow to a digit on a screen,
right?
But then you've got, for example, all blockchain. You've got blockchain. You've got Bitcoin. You've got this whole world online, and this whole world online is now becoming even more non-physical, and it's just something to observe. It's something to observe. It's something to come and realize that once upon a time, our very, very physical avodah of transaction and what we placed value and meaning upon has now become completely and utterly non-physical. Look at the direction it's going. But that fits into a very Jewish Torah idea, how the world is going to become more and more and more ruchnius. More and more ruchnius. It's going to become more and more non-physical. And that's something just to reflect upon. We've spoken, we've given many shiurim on this idea, that as we go weiter, as we go forward, the whole world is picked up from a state of physicality to non-physicality. We're going to raise our frequency. We're going to raise our consciousness. And if you look at the history of money, livestock, from livestock, first of all, they used to beat each other up, and then they moved to livestock, etc., etc. And then we're going to this world of notes and online banking.
Moving even more.
And more and more. It's becoming from physical to non-physical.
Wow, it's so fascinating, and just something that we, once again, as being on the program of Torah Jews, to appreciate that these changes that we see taking place in our world are not just changes, but they're actually manifestations of what's taking place in our timeline of creation. So it's such a fascinating topic, and I know we'll have to probably dedicate more time because there's a whole kuntres we need to get through. But just to sum up what we've done here today, just to sum up what we've done here today. So we asked this question, standing at that ATM, how do I feel about this money? How do I feel about this money? And what we've seen is that from the Torah perspective, the Torah relates to, and Judaism relates to the fact that money, which is something, right, where there's a transference which is taking place, it's something which is fluid. And that gives us a message, that first of all, as we're holding our money, to recognize not to hold on too tight. Hold on to it, don't drop it, but don't hold on too tight, because we have to understand, right, that that's a manifestation of this world within itself, and to realize that we're just channeling, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is sending money through us, so therefore we're able to use it in a positive way. And at the same time, to recognize that that even though we may just gotten in the habit of swiping cards and giving bills and swapping currencies, and thinking that there isn't perhaps the depth to it, to understand that the transference of money is really an invitation. It's an invitation that Kadosh Baruch Hu gives us a tool for us to recognize that all the effort that we put into in our area of parnasa in our lives, that when we get that bill, when you get that paycheck, when you get that dollar, to recognize there's just something that you can touch, you can hold, and feel good about. Not just because, look, I have more, and that means that I'm better than someone else, right? That's not the point, but to recognize that this is a manifestation of something that I've done. So next time you're at the ATM, feel good. And
think of Hashem, think of transference. Look at this.
And appreciate the fact that you can still hold on to money. Who knows where we'll be in another few years. But have a wonderful day.
Bracha, mazel, and hatzlacha, kol yeshuas.